There comes a moment in every human life when the soul whispers louder than the world shouts. You may not yet recognize it, but something within you is stirring. It is not anxiety, it is not confusion, it is the quiet breath of transformation rising from the depths. You are not falling apart, you are falling into place. The patterns that once defined you, your habits, your relationships, your ambitions, are beginning to dissolve. And though this may unsettle you, it is not the sign of an ending, it is the sacred prelude to a beginning. A beginning far greater than the mind can yet conceive. When the best stage of your life approaches, it does not announce itself with fireworks or applause. It begins in silence, in discomfort, in the peculiar ache of no longer being who you were, yet not fully knowing who you are becoming. That ache is holy. It is the threshold between the self you constructed and the self that longs to be born. And if you listen, truly listen, you will realize that life is not punishing you. Life is preparing you. It is unweaving the illusions you mistook for truth and returning you to something far more authentic, your soul's true direction. So I invite you, not with urgency, but with reverence, to listen to what follows, for what I will reveal is not merely information. It is a mirror, and if you dare to look deeply into it, you may recognize that everything falling away is making room for everything you are destined to become. There is something profoundly unsettling yet quietly sacred about the moment you begin to feel disconnected from who you used to be, not because you have failed, but because you have outgrown your former self. It happens subtly, almost imperceptibly at first. You wake up one day and realize that the things which once gave you comfort now feel strangely hollow. The conversations that once excited you now feel repetitive. The roles you played with such conviction now seem like costumes worn too long. This is not a crisis, it is an initiation. You are not lost, you are being summoned. The self you've known, built from the expectations of others, shaped by culture, family, and survival, begins to loosen its grip. And with that loosening comes discomfort. The ego resists this unraveling because it cannot imagine who you will be without all the labels and identities it has gathered over the years. But something deeper in you knows, it has always known. It waits patiently for the moment you will stop clinging to what is no longer real. This disconnection is often mistaken for confusion or even depression. People may tell you you're going through a phase or that you need to get back to your old self. But you sense the truth. The old self is no longer a fit for your expanding soul. You are not regressing, you are shedding. And while the shedding feels like loss, it is in fact liberation. You are peeling away everything that no longer aligns with the life that is calling you forward. At first, you may try to force yourself back into old patterns, hoping they will feel familiar again. But they don't. You may return to old friendships, old goals, even old dreams, only to find that something essential has shifted. It is not they who have changed, it is you. You are beginning to awaken from the trance of who you thought you were supposed to be. And now you are being asked to move toward who you truly are. But this awakening is not always graceful. It is raw. You may feel fragmented, like parts of you are falling away faster than you can understand them. But what is falling away is not your essence. It is your false armor. And though this armor once protected you, it is now too heavy to carry into the life that is waiting for you. So let it fall. Let yourself feel the disorientation. It is the fertile soil of rebirth. There is a silence within you now, deeper than thought. A silence that does not panic when you don't have all the answers. It simply watches, listens, and waits. In this silence, your true nature begins to surface, not as a sudden revelation, but as a slow remembering. You begin to recall what it feels like to belong to yourself. You notice small things, moments of clarity, glimpses of joy without reason, a newfound sensitivity to beauty. These are not accidents. These are the seeds of your next becoming. You may feel alone in this space, but know this: many walk through this threshold in silence, unsure of how to name what they are experiencing. The culture does not prepare us for the death of the false self. It rewards certainty, performance, and surface-level happiness. But the soul seeks depth, truth, and inner coherence, and it will keep whispering until you are brave enough to follow. You may begin to feel less interested in what others think, not out of defiance, but because their opinions no longer define your reality. You become more attuned to your own intuition, more drawn to authenticity than approval. This is not arrogance, it is integrity. You are learning to trust your own inner compass, even when it contradicts the noise around you. This stage often brings with it a deep weariness, not from weakness, but from having carried a self that no longer reflects who you are. You may feel tired of pretending, tired of performing, tired of living in a way that no longer makes sense. Let this tiredness guide you, not to collapse, but to rest, to pause, to listen, for in that rest your real self begins to breathe again. You may find yourself weeping without knowing why. You may feel joy at the most unexpected moments. Your emotions may surge in unpredictable waves. This is your soul's language. These are not symptoms to fix. They are signs that the inner walls are cracking, that your essence is breaking through the surface. You are beginning to live from a place that is not controlled, but deeply alive. It is easy to fear this unknown space, to rush towards something certain just to escape the discomfort. But if you can stay, if you can dwell in this in-between with patience and trust, you will come to see that everything you thought was falling apart was really falling into place. Your disconnection from the old is the first sign of your alignment with the new. The life you are about to enter is not built from the same bricks of identity you once used. It is softer, stronger, truer. It does not require performance. It only asks for presence, and presence cannot be worn like a mask. It must rise from the core of your being, and right now, in this very disconnection, that core is being revealed. This is how the best stage of your life begins, not with certainty, but with surrender, not with clarity, but with courage. You are standing at the threshold of your becoming. Let yourself cross. At some point in the quiet unfolding of transformation, you will find yourself turning inward not out of loneliness, but because something deeper is beginning to call you home. It is here that the world's noise starts to fade, the constant movement, the endless search for stimulation, the urgency to be seen and heard. These begin to feel strangely hollow. Not wrong, not bad, simply irrelevant. You may begin to notice that the company of others no longer carries the same weight it once did. The gatherings, the chatter, the pursuit of belonging in the eyes of others. What once fed you now feels like a distraction from something far more intimate and true. At first, this shift might frighten you. You may wonder if you are pulling away from life. You may question if your growing desire for solitude is a sign that something is wrong. But I tell you, it is not withdrawal. It is a sacred return. When you begin to find peace in your own presence, when you no longer need the noise to feel alive, You are touching something most people run from all their lives, the essence of your soul. Solitude, when entered consciously, is not isolation, it is communion, it is the meeting of yourself with yourself. It is where the outer roles dissolve, and only what is essential remains. You begin to feel your own rhythm again. You notice the way your thoughts move, the way your breath flows, the subtle flickers of intuition that were once buried beneath distraction. You are not escaping the world. You are learning to be in it without being consumed by it. And yet the world may not understand. Others may ask why you are quieter now, why you seem less interested in the usual rhythms. You may feel misunderstood, even judged. But part of this stage is learning to stand gently in your truth without needing others to validate it. You are not becoming less, you are becoming whole. There is a kind of magic that arises when you begin to sit with yourself in stillness. Not to analyze, not to fix, but to simply be, to witness all that you are, your longings, your fears, your strengths, and your shadows, and to hold them without turning away. In that space, you begin to remember that you are not your thoughts, you are not your achievements. You are not the mask you wear in public, you are something far more eternal, far more vast. This kind of solitude reveals you to yourself. It sharpens your inner vision, and the more you dwell there, the more you begin to see others clearly as well. You begin to recognize who truly nourishes your spirit and who simply distracts it. You begin to see which connections are rooted in truth and which are built on fear, performance, or habit. This awareness does not create arrogance. It creates discernment, and with that discernment comes freedom. You are no longer driven by the need to fill your time. You begin to value depth over quantity. A single quiet moment of real connection means more than 100 loud conversations that never touched your heart. You begin to choose more carefully, not from a place of superiority, but from a deep sense of reverence for your own energy, your own becoming. There may be moments in this process where the silence feels heavy. You may miss the comfort of being surrounded by noise, by familiarity. But if you can stay with that silence, if you can lean into its discomfort, you will begin to see what lies beyond it. Beneath the surface of solitude is serenity, a kind of inner anchoring that no external chaos can shake. You stop searching for peace outside of yourself because you've found where it truly lies, and in that inner anchoring, something beautiful begins to grow: self-trust. You no longer look outward for answers that only your own soul can provide. You begin to trust your instincts, your timing, your inner knowing. You learn to sit with a question without rushing to resolve it. You allow life to unfold, not as a problem to be solved, but as a mystery to be lived. This is maturity, this is depth, this is alignment, and perhaps most remarkably, you begin to see that being alone does not mean being abandoned. It means being available to life, to truth, to grace. You stop fearing your own company because you've learned how to keep yourself company in the most loving way. You stop running from your own reflection, you meet yourself fully, and for the first time you realize you were never truly alone. You had simply forgotten how to be with yourself. In this new stage, you no longer feel the urge to explain your journey to those who do not understand it. You do not feel the need to convince others of your worth or your direction. Your solitude has taught you that truth does not need to shout. It simply needs to be lived, and in living it, you become a quiet light to others, not through words, but through presence. You will find that the best relationships are born not from need, but from overflow. not from filling a void, but from the meeting of two whole beings who have each walked their own path of solitude and returned to the world, not empty but full. The best stage of your life does not arrive with loud fanfare. It begins in these soft, silent moments, when you no longer fear your own company, when you realize the silence was never empty, it was sacred. There comes a point in the unfolding of your inner life when the desire for superficial success begins to dissolve. Not because you have failed to achieve it, but because you have. You've touched the things you once chased: recognition, status, titles, approval, and you have discovered that they do not touch you in return. The applause fades, the praise echoes hollow, the satisfaction is fleeting. You smile for the world while quietly asking yourself, is this all there is? It is a haunting question, and yet a necessary one. It is the question that signals the turning. You are no longer driven by the need to be seen. You are beginning to long to be known. And to be known truly begins not with others but with yourself. In the earlier stages of your journey, you were conditioned to believe that success was the same as fulfillment, that the more you accumulated, the more whole you would feel. So you set your eyes on the horizon and chased after the ideals handed to you: achievement, productivity, image, relevance. You sculpted yourself in response to external standards, often suppressing the quiet whispers of your own soul. You told yourself it was temporary, that once you reached the next level, then it would all make sense. Then you would feel at peace, but peace never came in the way you expected. And now, as the distance between who you are and what you pursue grows more visible, something within you begins to stir. You notice that your hunger is not satisfied by success that is measured in metrics. Your spirit grows restless when forced to perform a version of yourself for reward. And though the world may call this dissatisfaction a crisis, it is in truth the beginning of freedom. You are not losing ambition. You are refining it. You are no longer interested in what glitters if it does not nourish you. You are not rejecting growth. You are simply redefining what it means to grow. You are turning away from the shallow pursuit of image and turning towards something deeper, something quieter: integrity. Integrity cannot be bought, it cannot be performed, it cannot be faked. It arises from the alignment between who you are and how you live. And that alignment is the birthplace of meaning. Without it, no amount of success can fill the silence of your disconnection. With it, even the simplest life feels rich and alive. This is why the best stage of your life often begins with a letting go, not of effort, but of illusion. You begin to release the need to be admired in ways that cost you your authenticity. You stop sacrificing your values for applause. You stop proving and start becoming, and as you do, you may find that your world begins to shift. What once felt essential now feels excessive. What once felt impressive now feels irrelevant. You may feel guilt for wanting less. You may worry that you are giving up on your potential. But what you are giving up is not your potential. It is the false version of success that led you away from yourself. True potential does not demand you betray your inner world. It calls you deeper into it. It does not demand performance. It demands presence. You may notice a new kind of ambition awakening in you, one that is no longer tied to ego. It does not need to dominate, to be first, to be seen. It simply wants to express the truth, to build something honest, to create from the soul rather than for the spotlight. This kind of ambition is not loud. It is not frantic. It is rooted, and it will take you farther than anything built on pretense. There is a great paradox here. As you stop striving to impress, you become more powerful, not in the eyes of the world necessarily, but in the energy of your being. People will begin to feel the difference. There is a quiet strength in those who no longer need approval, a presence that speaks louder than any resume, a clarity that cannot be imitated. You may begin to change the way you work, the way you relate, the way you make decisions. You begin to ask different questions. Does this align with who I am? Does this nourish my spirit? Does this make me more whole or more divided? These questions do not come from the intellect, they rise from the soul, and they mark the passage from a life of reaction to a life of intention. Of course, this path is not always easy. The world often rewards performance more than authenticity. You may face criticism, you may be misunderstood, you may even lose things, opportunities, relationships, reputations. But what you gain in return is far greater. You gain yourself, and once you truly have yourself, you are no longer afraid to lose anything else. You will find that fulfillment does not come in grand moments of arrival. It comes in small, subtle acts of alignment. It comes when you choose what is right over what is impressive, when you speak what is true over what is popular, when you show up as you are, even if it costs you applause. This is when you know you are entering the best stage of your life, not when you have more, but when you need less to feel whole. When the external world no longer dictates your worth, when you are willing to walk away from anything that asks you to betray your essence, when you realize that peace is more valuable than praise and purpose more vital than prestige, you are no longer chasing the life that looks good. You are living the life that feels right. There is a subtle shift that occurs when the soul begins to trust life. It rarely arrives with a loud declaration. It begins quietly, like the soft cracking of old armor. You do not notice it at first. You still make plans, still grasp for certainty, still try to piece together the map of your future using the logic of your past. But then something unexpected happens. Something doesn't go your way. A door closes. A path you were counting on disappears. And yet, instead of panic, you feel something different: stillness. Not the stillness of resignation, but the stillness of acceptance. A quiet voice within you says, "Let it be," and you listen. This is the beginning of trust. You see, for most of your life, you've been taught to believe that control equals safety, that if you could just predict, manage, and plan every detail, you would be protected from chaos. You've spent years building defenses against the unknown. You've tried to force life into a pattern, into a shape that felt comfortable, and for a while it may have worked. But deep down, you always knew it was fragile, because life, in its truest form, cannot be controlled. It can only be entered. To trust the unknown is not to give up on direction. It is to surrender the illusion that you are the one who must carry the entire universe on your back. It is to realize that something wiser than your fear is already guiding you. You begin to sense that your need to control everything is not strength, it is fear in disguise. And when that fear softens, you begin to see that uncertainty is not your enemy. It is your invitation. This shift does not make you passive, it makes you present. You stop projecting your mind endlessly into the future, trying to outrun the ache of not knowing. You begin to show up fully where you are, even if where you are is unclear, because something inside you knows. Even in this uncertainty, you are being led. Even in this confusion, something is unfolding on your behalf. There will be moments when the mind resists. It will demand guarantees. It will tell you to go back, to cling to the known, to rebuild the old structures you've outgrown. But the soul will not go backward. It knows that growth happens not by staying safe, but by walking deeper into the unknown. And when you choose to trust not blindly, but with awareness, you give life permission to surprise you. You stop trying to control the river and you learn to swim with its current. This trust is not naive. It is born from experience, from watching things fall apart, only to discover that what was meant for you still found its way to you. From seeing how the greatest changes often come disguised as loss. From realizing that your most painful moments were not punishments, but turning points. That the detours were never detours at all. They were the path. It is here that humility is born, a humility that does not shrink but expands. You no longer believe you must know everything to move forward. You are no longer addicted to answers. You begin to live the questions, and you discover that when you stop needing certainty, you make space for mystery. You make space for grace. Grace does not arrive with explanation. It arrives with presence, with the subtle beauty of a moment you didn't expect, with the synchronicity of a chance encounter, with the way clarity comes not when you demand it, but when you are quiet enough to receive it. This is how life begins to feel different, not because your circumstances have changed, but because your relationship to them has. You become less reactive. You stop rushing to label things as good or bad, success or failure. You begin to observe. You listen more, you resist less, and in that resistance softening, something remarkable happens. You begin to feel peace, not as a result of controlling life, but as a result of flowing with it. You may begin to see that your most difficult seasons were not detours. They were initiation. They broke down the part of you that needed control, that clung to rigid plans, that believed certainty was the same as safety. In their place, a deeper self began to emerge, a self that does not need every step to be known, a self that trusts its own timing, a self that understands that uncertainty is not the absence of direction, it is the presence of potential. And so, when others around you are panicking, you remain grounded, not because you have the answers, but because you have found something more valuable: trust. Trust not in a specific outcome, but in your ability to meet life as it comes. Trust not in a perfect path, but in your capacity to walk it with presence. Trust not that nothing will go wrong, but that whatever comes, you will grow through it. This is the essence of the best stage of life. It is not when everything goes according to plan. It is when you no longer need it to. It is when you no longer try to bend life into shape, but allow life to shape you. When you stop demanding certainty and start participating in the unfolding mystery of your own becoming. When you trust, not because you know what's next, but because you are no longer afraid to not know.